And it really extends out as they get up there to any stakeholders who they buy from, who they sell to. And they bring that attitude of compassion and empathy, that sense of wanting to really bring out the best in everybody, knowing that that will be the best for everybody.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews.
Hello and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name is Rick Nuske. I am your host and it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. If this is your first time on the show, I hope you take away a lot of value. There certainly is a lot to take in during one of these wonderful calls. Now on today's call, I'm with the Dr. Ron Stotts. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Hi, well, thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now, just for context, Ron, we're going to share that you're an author, a transformational guide and life coach, and we're going to be talking about your higher level leadership training and the work that you do guiding individuals through their personal and professional transformations into conscious living leadership. Now, that is one heck of a mouthful, isn't it?
You did well.
Thank you very much. Now, what I like to do before we jump into the core of the core, Ron, is to learn a little bit about you. So I think a good place to start is to ask you where home is for you.
Say that again?
Where home is for you? Where are you located?
I'm on Bainbridge Island, across from Seattle in Washington, in the northwest of the United States.
Fantastic.
Moved here from Santa Barbara about a couple of years ago, my wife and I, and just loving just being in all the green and the lushness and the lovely area.
I was going to ask you about that. What was it that attracted you to that place?
Well, my kids are up here and family. I was actually born and raised up here, but that was a long time ago. And, but also, just I wanted to be near more of a hub like Seattle or San Francisco. So I'm working more directly with the local environment. Most of my clients come from all over, and they fly in and stay and work with me. So just explore. This was pre-COVID, but I'd explore more of the local.
I tell you what, having been to San Francisco Bay, I would live there myself. What a beautiful place that is. Do you often make your way down that sort of way?
Well, my wife's from there. We lived there for about 15 years, or about 12 years, I guess.
Excellent.
And, so we go regularly, probably once a year, and I have a lot of clients down there. So some I go down and do special work with, and others come up here. So, yeah.
So is walking a big thing for you? What do you do with yourself? Do you like, hobbies like that or sports? What do you do?
Well, you nailed it pretty much. We are walkers.
Yeah.
Well, we get at least 2.5, 3 miles in a day, and then I'm trying to recover my golf game right now.
Oh.
So
Are you any good at it, or are you like me? You're a bit of a hacker.
I would say I'm a bit of a hacker.
If you want your grass cord, come and see us. We'll take a round and we'll do your lawns for you. Now, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say boating is probably the other big thing that we're always doing. So.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to see in the waters around there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have Mavericks just around the way from there? Mavericks Beach? Is that a place that you have?
That's down south. That's not in this area. No.
Right. Yeah, because I've seen heard some stories, seen some things. It's pretty amazing coastline that you have there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now on to movies. Now, are you a movie buff? Do you like movies?
Well, I used to go to a lot of them.
Of course, we all did, I think. What about at home? Do you stream anything?
Yes, we got one room that we use for that sort of thing that allows me to watch my sci-fi and science movies without disturbing my wife. So.
See, the unique thing about this show, Ron, is that I like to take a bit of a deep dive into the people's lives that I'm speaking with, rather than going just into the nuts and bolts of business, because I think fundamentally much of that stays the same. So if we could roll back the window of time, or the door of time, whatever you want to call it, and go back to your early days where you grew up. Can you remember where it was that you grew up, obviously, but a fond memory that you might recall that you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, I grew up in the Seattle area, and my grandparents had a summer cabin on an island up here. So I spent almost all my time outdoors. And even when I was in school, I spent most of my time looking outdoors. So just hiking and boating, and I love animals. I don't love to hunt them. I do love to connect with them and follow them around. And
yes, of course.
That. And just being in nature is really
that's wonderful feedback. Do you have any pets at the moment, Ron, in your family?
Not at the moment. We're borrowing the neighbor's dog for that sort of thing.
Now I know you have a very rich story, let's call it that, to share with the audience. But others around you, as you were growing up, would have had some level of influence on the man that you've become today. Do you have anybody that you can recall that helped form you into the person that you've become?
Well, that's a big question. Certainly my dad, in terms of integrity and work ethic and that type of thing. But it really was when I got older, in my 20s, I was just absolutely blessed to have Buckminster Fuller as a mentor, and Joseph Campbell as a mentor. Mm-hmm. And so I really got to hang out with some of the old guard. And I mean, when I say hang out, I'm talking about walking in the woods and talking. Yeah. But I was head of a brain integration center, a co-director, and we happened to be on the leading edge of neurological studies in the brain and that type of thing. And I was applying it to really how do you use that in terms of personal development and growth. And so we really had the best of the best coming to us. And I got to co-create. I would share all of our information. They'd share all of their information with me. I'd go through all their teacher training, and then we'd co-create seminars. So it was just the heyday of working with the best and creating with the best. It was fantastic. Yeah.
You look back on these times, you don't realize how golden they are until they've passed, do you? Yeah. Now, can you tell us, I read somewhere in your information that you served in Vietnam, is that correct?
I served in the Marine Corps, and I got out on medical discharge. I hurt my knee towards advanced training, and so I did not go over.
Right.
That's a difficult topic for me because I lost a lot of friends over that.
This is the thing that I read, and you talked about, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, but you talked about leadership, how terrible leadership resulted in the death of those 60 wonderful men in your platoon. Now, is this part of maybe where your interest in life coaching and leadership and that maybe stemmed from, the genesis of it?
Just perhaps.
Yeah, just perhaps.
Yeah, I got out of the Marine Corps, and they didn't have things called PTSD and chemical imbalance back then. But it turned out I was in the midst of that, and so it was a difficult time. And then I found out that 62 of the 64 of us had been killed over there, and that really rocked my boat.
I bet it did.
I actually, turned out I had a chemical imbalance that was due to the PTSD, and that kind of took me into into a very suicidal period. And it was really the recovery of that. I did try and commit suicide, but in the very moment that I would have died, I literally just got lost in a white ball of light and saw everything, I saw the perfection and everything. I saw what the meaning of life was, and that I could trust it, and God knows how long that took. But when I came out of it, I really felt a drive and a clarity in life to discover what we were really capable of. And an inward journey, not an outward one. You know
what? When you smile, you radiate. You really mean your smile. I can tell it. And life is worth living, isn't it?
It is. It is such a precious gift. And I mean, I've really come to the place where I see everything that comes into my life, no matter how challenging or troubling it might be, it is all a perfect gift. if I just am willing to breathe into it, look deeper, and heal whatever is ready to be healed, that really, there's a gift that comes with that makes me more whole and allows me to even more fully unconditionally love and accept myself. Life is just amazing.
That was a very difficult segue, I'm sure, for you, and I really do appreciate it, Ron. Thank you so very much. Now, I'm wondering if we could, I know that obviously you're a doctor, if we could maybe talk a little bit about your educational background, just to give some context to the listeners.
Well, I was a terrible student.
Me too.
But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a lot of obligations. I had kids, and so I really had to learn. And in that process, it turned out that I was doing things differently than status quo. And so even while I was getting my master's degree, I started in English. I started teaching at Compton Community College, and where they were really having trouble with the kids. And I created learning programs and had a great deal of success. So I went on to, for a few years, create those learning programs in other colleges and universities. But I came to a place where they started asking me, well, how do I do what I'm doing? How do I teach my creative writing classes and have everybody in publishing? And how do I create these learning centers that are, people are coming through them and really finding themselves as well as learning how to learn. And I didn't have an answer. And so that's when I went back for my PhD, and I got a PhD in psychology, which started off about learning, but it really became about what are we capable of.
So much more.
Yeah. And then it wasn't really until my 40s. I used the breathing a great deal in my work, and I use other body movements and that type of thing. So I went back and got a chiropractic degree, and that's been useful. I was only a chiropractor for a few years, but having that knowledge of the physiology and the chemistry and the neurology just furthered my ability to reach and support and help people.
There's a bit of a triangle. There's a bit of a triangle going on, isn't there?
Yeah, that's kind of the old mind, body, spirit thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also a meditation teacher. But I did meet my wife in chiropractic.
Oh, yes.
Probably the only reason I stayed for the whole thing.
Of course, you need a good enough reason, don't you? Now, in terms of your corporate background, maybe if we could talk a little bit about that. What have you done in your career prior to all of this? Yeah,
it really started a long time ago, back in the 80s.
So relative.
Relative. It's all relative. I was just moved to LA, and I was at a friend's house, and he was having a party. I didn't drink at the time, but I was going into the kitchen, squeezing through a couple of people, and I heard them talking about something, and it sounded like they were looking for some sort of workshop process to get people to see a particular thing. And so I kind of went in and poured my juice, and I was on my way back out, and I have this tendency, this ability to kind of have a big mind flow thought come through me. And so I kind of innocently shared it with them as I was walking out, and they just went, wow, exactly what we wanted. And one fellow happened to be a famous author and owner of a corporation called Inner Games. So I went to work for them. They hired me the next week as the executive vice president, and turned out what I spent the next year or so doing was helping AT&T go through what was called divestiture, going from a monopoly to a for-profit organization. So I literally was, traveling all over the world, working with all levels of management, leadership, and really gave me a great deal of insight as to what they were capable of and what they were up to. I have to be honest with you, it kind of felt like I was dealing with the Johnson family or the Smith family, because, it was like, okay, so this is dad, this is mom,
yes,
and this is a big church.
A man after my own heart, never let that worry you.
And I started more, probably in the 2000s, working with entrepreneurs, and just I'd worked with people who own NFL teams. I'd worked with high-level people, but I never thought about it in terms of, that's what I do. I just work with people.
Yep.
But I started finding out what really quality leadership could look like, conscious leadership, the highest levels of leadership. And my publisher really, as I was writing my first book, suggested that I look into it more, because he says, you're the only person that I've ever heard of who understands how to take people into those highest levels of leadership. And I thought that was a little odd, since I'm not a corporate guy, but it turns out that all of the work that I did as a spiritual teacher, helping people raise their consciousness, is really the same thing. Your highest level leaders are really just the most conscious people in the business world. And their capabilities of working in collaboration and cooperation, and their agility that comes from really having a well-trained, neurologically developed mind comes into play. And those are all the things that I do and love doing. And so, so that just graduated me into that area more and more fully.
Thank you very much for sharing. The thing that came to my mind is that these higher level leaders and leadership skills come from making conscious, deliberate decisions, don't they? So is this a lot to do with mindset and combined with feeling the body? Is that how this works?
It really, it comes out of exactly what I've spent my whole life experiencing, significant personal transformational experiences. And and it's filled, my life is filled with regular practices, meditation, martial arts, mindfulness, just, on and on and on.
On and on.
And that is really what takes people into those higher levels of consciousness and allows them to stay and lead from that place. And so, with my work, it allows people within a couple of months to really accelerate through healing their past, which gives them a foundation to work from, but then also in a 9-month program to elevate their level of consciousness is really what I'm doing. There's all sorts of ways to talk about it, but what I'm really doing is helping people upgrade their brain.
Yeah.
So that, first of all, they get a whole functional integrated brain, and then they access the forebrain, and then they begin to understand how to access what I call big mind, which is really connecting with a higher level of consciousness. Both, it's really them, but it's the best of who they are.
Of course. This is a wonderful call. I'm really taking a lot out of it, as I'm sure the My Future Business audience are as well. Thank you again, Ron. Now, I know that leadership can come in many ways, shapes and forms, and you can, develop yourself, your physical body, as well as your mindset, as we've just spoken about. Now, I wonder if you can tell us about your experience with the coach who guided you to become a rowing champion, and whether or not you learned anything about leadership at that time.
That's a good one. Got me. Dave Grant, is at a little college, community college. And even though I had rowed all my life, rowboats, up at our summer cabin and that type of thing, I never realized there was rowing. Rowing to me was I'm competing against my husband. Is this a thing? I'm walking across campus and I see a little, flyer, which is what they did then, and said you have to be 6'2", and I was just 6'1" and 9'8". So I thought, I can get away with it.
Put some tall shoes on, Ron.
Yeah. So I went out, and it was me. It was perfect. But Dave turned out to be probably the best coach anybody could have had. I mean, just down the street, we have a fellow who's a 2-time Olympian champion, and he trained at Orange Coast College with Dave, 20 years after I was there. And so we had little Quonset huts that weren't, I was the shortest guy in the group. I mean, they were like up to 6'7" and that sort of thing. And so we'd bring the boats into these Quonset huts, and everybody's leaning over, including me. And it was just a sand lot on the water, and the dock would be all tipply, and it was ridiculous. Nobody thought about it, but that was that's what we had.
What it was.
We did, and turns out we became the rowing champions, and we did it such a good job that they called us the Giant Killers. and because we had taken on all of the big universities, not just the freshman crews, but the varsities, and beat everybody's time significantly in the championship. And so that was really Dave. That was really his leadership and the kindness and the patience and the, I think when I have to be honest, I really regret it. He said, "Ron, would you like to row a single in the Olympics?" And, I was just in the confusion of my post-military time.
Yes.
And, I just, of course I said yes, but then life just overwhelmed me.
Didn't happen. Yeah, look, that's a wonderful story. I wonder, the thing I took from that, Ron, was that there's individual leadership, but as a team, you all have a part to play in the leadership experience. What side of that do you help your clients with? Is there that dimension to this?
Well, it's a sneaky part.
Yes.
My goal is if I help them into the highest levels of leadership, in other words, they're a more conscious human being.
Yes.
The same things that I watch with anybody who moves into a higher state of consciousness, their definition of self moves from just themselves to others. And so just as a conscious person begins to care for others and wants to help others in the world, so a high-level leader automatically begins to care more for the people that are working with them, anybody involved in the organization. And it really extends out as they get up there to any stakeholders, who they buy from, who they sell to. And they bring that attitude of compassion and empathy, that sense of wanting to really bring out the best in everybody, knowing that will be the best for everybody. And what, no surprise, they, across the board, all the research shows that they're making about 40% more profit and have 40% more productivity, because everybody's on board. Everybody feels like they're part of something. So they're contributing more and they're excited about it. My clients, I'm blown away by, I've got one who, he tough bird, just, he came in and he more than doubled his 10-figure business.
Oh, wow.
In a year. And so, a lot of my clients are going, well, 40%, but so it's really a matter of just accessing, literally the neurological upgrades that happen allow us to get out of that part of our brain that's controlled by the overreactive emotional centers and take us into the higher thinking mind, and then have it controlled by the forebrain, which is really supposed to be the CEO of our life. And as we start moving into that perspective where we're not overreacting, as a matter of fact, our reaction is what's best for us and everybody involved. And that's amazing and magnificent just on that stage alone.
Of course, yes.
Then as you start accessing big mind, which means you've really learned to quiet your mind and put out a request for an idea, a design, information of some type, and trust that will come in. That allows you to be much more agile. You're not thrown off by anything because you're not going down all these dead ends. It's like
it's transcendent.
It's going to sound like out of left field, but I have a hobby, and it's designing Japanese gardens.
Oh, yes.
And one of my clients found out about this, and so he wanted a Japanese garden for his wife, and he's very high level. This was years ago during the .com period. And so I created $1 million Japanese garden for he and his wife.
Wow.
And I was a little overwhelmed. I was a lot overwhelmed when I first thought about doing this. But all I did was do what I do best. And that's just sat down, quiet my mind, put out the intention of what I wanted, how I wanted to serve these people, the space, and that we were going to create a garden. And I just sat there for an hour or two and watched this beautiful garden get created in my mind, literally just watching it, just like I'm watching a movie. And total trust and surrender to that ability and that gift. And then, 3 months later, I'd created it. Never put anything down on paper, never even thought about it. because we have that ability, and it can be used in the boardroom, in the meetings, and when I'm working with clients all the time. You can just learn to access the best of who you are by looking inward, by quiet in your mind, by getting centered, by living mindfully. I mean, really what kind of comes down to that.
That's incredible. You know, that belief in yourself and that tapping into something that a lot of us don't even recognize that we have access to. It's very, very powerful. Now, I'd love to ask you just briefly, this seems to me, Ron, that you wouldn't just have a transactional relationship with your clients, you would have more of a relationship, a real relationship. How long do you find that you're working with people?
Well, you know, I have a 2-month program and a 9-month program, and then I have other things that they can do. Don't tell the psychologist this, but
I will not.
I actually have remained friends with many of them for decades.
Yes, yes.
Some of them are my best friends. And it's because we're playing on the same level. We're you know, just creating life. You know, that fellow I was just telling you about that did so well, you know, he wants to create things with me, and, you know, I'll be talking with him on Friday about some challenges that he's running into, because they need somebody to
bounce off.
Yeah, they you know, and what happens is my only skill is I quiet my mind, and quieting my mind allows me to really move into any level of consciousness that I want, well, even beyond awareness of self. So when somebody calls me, especially these high-level people who have really evolved and are doing amazing stuff in their life,
yes,
all I have to do is listen to the challenge that they're in, quiet my mind. See, that takes me to a level where I can see the answer. I, of course, don't give them the answer, which they don't always do. But I look at, okay, how can I help them look deeper so they can see what's holding them back, because that's always something there.
Yeah.
Help them heal that, because in healing that, they're going to re-access a part of themselves that they didn't have available before. And in accessing that part, it's the very gift that they need to access within themselves to become whole enough to raise that level of consciousness that they can see the answer.
It's there, and it comes forth to them.
Every time.
Every time, without fail. Look, if you're listening in and you're watching this call somewhere along the line, get excited. This is very, very revolutionary stuff almost. Now, in fact, transformational would be the appropriate word. Now, Ron, when we go to your website, I know that you are a multiple-time author. Tell us a little bit about the books that you've written.
Well, you know, it's funny being an author, because you're supposed to write a book that's really for a very specific person, and, you know, my work could really be for anybody, the truth is.
Yeah.
But, you know, so the first book was really, a lot of people were coming to me and they're going, well, I've got this big dream, but they were kind of locked in the doingness of their own success. So they were really overscheduled by their own success and weren't able to go after this gold project that they wanted to do. So it sounded like a time management problem, but I realized they weren't really accessing the best of who and what they are. And so in working with them, they were really able to completely restructure their lives so that they are able to not only bring out the best in everybody else, so that they're handling all the doingness in their particular life, but that leaves them time to really focus on their dream job, what they do best generally, and what will contribute to everybody else's growth also generally. So
great.
Yeah. So, and then in my advanced course, mindfulness, as I mentioned, is a big thing. So I have a mindfulness book. It's kind of a year-long journal that allows somebody each week to have a different mindfulness exercise and journal about it. So it's important, I think, to write things down. I mean, I remember somebody had just moved into a new home, my wife and I, and it was still fairly bare, but I had some books on a shelf, and somebody grabbed a little notebook off the shelf, and they were reading it. And it was about spiritual experiences that I'd had in the desert with one of my early teachers. And it was like I'd forgotten all about how magical it was. And, you know, it was almost like the Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda stuff. And And in seeing that little journal and hearing those snippets, I realized, boy, we really have to write things down, because sometimes we need to go back and look at them and remember where we've come from, and that's good. And the last book is really just about how to move into these higher states of leadership, how to cultivate extraordinary leadership. And I'm finding that at first I thought, I'm going to look for the higher levels, because my goal is to change the consciousness of the world. It's just a little one.
Yeah, just a small goal.
And I thought, I'll go with the 100th monkey idea. If I can if I can move 1,000 people into those higher levels of leadership, then we can make a significant shift, and everything will shift along with that. And so what I'm finding, though, is people are coming and doing the work, and whatever their area is, they're moving that level of consciousness into that area. So, educators, business people, housing development people.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden I realized, that 1,000 people aren't already high-level leaders. They're just people who have evolved and taking whatever they're interested in into those higher levels, and that's how we'll transform the consciousness of the world, so that we're not killing ourselves, destroying the planet
along the way. Well, that's wonderful feedback again. Thank you, Ron. Now, do you have any intention to continue writing?
I don't think I have a choice.
It's a must. It's a must.
Yeah, it's a matter of which book.
Which book we're going to go for. Yeah. Now, we are at the point end of the call, Ron, and importantly, people are going to want to know how to connect with you, where to find you, so they can start working with you. How would they do that?
I think the best way, the easiest way, is just to go to my website at ronstotts.com, RONSTOTTS.com. And I've actually, just the other day, we put up on the homepage a sheet here, and read a note. It's basically a questionnaire. It's 9 insightful questions that any entrepreneur should be asking themselves. The truth is, anybody should be asking themselves. And what's going to happen is, in reading that, you're going to understand really what your best next step in life and in your profession could be. And so that's where I'd send them.
Excellent. Well, look, if you're on this call today and you wanted to learn more, certainly visit ronstotts.com. That's RONSTOTTS.com. No matter where you listen to this or see this call, you'll definitely find the links back to Ron. And with all that being said, Ron, what a wonderful call. Thank you very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
Well, thank you, Rick. Really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and best to everyone out there. Enjoy the journey.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.